And that's the biggest thing about art. It's better to be different than it is to be better.
Welcome to Self-Funded with Spencer, sponsored by Pareto Health, ClaimDoc, and PlanSight. Whether we're discussing innovative new healthcare strategies, exposing hidden revenue streams or misaligned incentives, or even just cheering on the next generation of this industry, we promise you that you're going to learn something. So thank you for joining us for another great conversation about the future of healthcare.
Like if you think about police sketches.
Yeah.
And if someone wants to describe someone, I find that really difficult too. I find that I mean, the only way you can kind of establish certain things is like if someone wears glasses or facial hair or things like that. But trying to draw a nose based on haven't seen,
and especially a layperson that's going, oh, I saw this for like a minute, right? I saw this person, and now I'm trying to describe them.
Yeah.
I don't even know what words I would exactly use to describe a shape, right? And so like, it's limited on my ability to communicate it, and then it has to be interpreted, and then that's got to be really hit or miss, man.
And then if you can't do it, I would imagine if you showed someone a bunch of photos, now you're really going to distort because memory is extremely unreliable.
Yep.
Right. So, yeah, I mean.
So safe to say you're not going to go into the world of forensic sketch artists.
No. And then like, you have courtroom drawings. Right. And that's because they don't allow videos in courtrooms and stuff like that.
Those have a weird style to them, the courtroom drawings.
Right.
Why is that? They're almost blurry intentionally, or I don't know how you describe the effect. Do you know what that is?
I think they're using pastels a lot of times, and that's because they can work quickly and establish a broad range of colors and be able to. But yeah, it's funny because the level of skill is gonna kind of dictate how that stuff comes out, and sometimes it's just hard. The best way to learn to draw is from drawing from life. So just have you sit across from me and draw. But it's not super easy because I kind of have to pick, what angle I'm going to draw you at. So you just tilted your head.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it while you're saying it. Yeah.
So even though you just tilted your head, I've already got my skull and line of symmetry already there. So now I have to kind of wait till you get back there, which you just went back.
Yeah.
And then I would really quickly.
Do you find yourself observing life like that all the time?
Oh yeah. One of our assignments in college was to draw from life. You have a sketchbook and you go to a cafe and you would just draw people. And what it would get you to understand is a couple things. So for one, I'm understanding gesture. So when you look at a drawing, there's a difference between something looking alive and looking very stiff. All right. So when I'm drawing a person and drawing a vase or a vase, two different things. One needs to have life, one doesn't. So we call it still life. So that's kind of where you learn to draw is a still life. But if I'm drawing a human, the movement that's happening, I kind of want to capture that. All right. So I don't want things to be stiff. Things are not necessarily symmetrical, even though it may appear, right? Yeah. So our faces are not symmetrical, even though they appear. So some of the looseness that comes from that will give us movement in our drawing. But we also it needs to be accurate. So drawing from life gets you to loosen up a little bit because I'm not so caught up on making sure your eye is exactly straight, but I do want you to feel alive. So the fact that it's off a little bit is going to help me bring that portrait to life.
What's the uniqueness of the individual, right? I mean, I think about that. There was a quote I saw, and I wish I could actually get the quote, but it was something to the fact that like beauty will always include some sort of distortion of perfection. Like an exactly perfect person doesn't exist. There's always going to be something that's slightly off, and that's what also makes them interesting, right? That's memorable. And even a little bit of an imperfection is the human element that's applied to that. And so I'm thinking of all these things as you're describing your process. And going, sure. That's why that makes sense. That's you or that's me, that slight distortion of symmetry or whatever it may be. And I think sometimes I'm going deep real fast, but sometimes like when you look at stuff online and especially the influencer culture and all the filters, it's like you have to portray exact perfection and you almost feel lesser than because you realize, oh, my eye is a little off or my ear is a different angle or whatever. And it distorts your own view of yourself, unfortunately.
Yeah, and they're stripping everything that could actually make them unique. So what I tell a lot of artists, especially when I'm speaking to people that are trying to get into the industry or just trying to find themselves, it's not always what you can do that makes you who you are. Sometimes the things that you don't do well create your style.
Okay.
So, for instance, if I'm not great at drawing eyes, maybe there's some unique way that I found to draw eyes because I'm not great at drawing them to a level of realism that everyone else is. Because of that, now I draw eyes differently than everyone else. Now, how do people recognize me? Oh, that's the guy that draws the eyes
like that.
Like
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So now you've created a style because of what you can't do. So a lot of times when we look at what someone does well, we say we work so hard to do that, but we can lean into our flaws a little bit, and that kind of creates who we are. So it's the same thing as like take like a Macy Gray, that raspy voice.
Yeah, I could picture her voice
and
right
then
now.
a Mariah Carey.
Yeah.
It's great that she can't sing like Mariah Carey. Now she's in this totally different lane. It's great that she can't do that. So if you can't draw eyes or hands really well, maybe that creates, something for you. If you can't draw people really well, maybe you develop some type of style that's a little bit looser, that is a little bit more stylized, that gets you to create something new.
Well, that's what you and I are talking over coffee, and I want to introduce you in a second, right? Yeah. So, because we just kind of dived into it, but we were talking over coffee. I see those folks that do that photorealistic sketch artists, right? And it's impressive, right? It really is impressive, where they'll put a picture side by side to their hand drawing, and it's almost indecipherable which is which. But you were also saying that that's a style that a lot of people can do, right? And there's ways that you can sort of, I don't want to say cheat it, but accomplish it. It's indistinguishable between not only the photo, but it's indistinguishable between other people that can also do that thing. And you were kind of opening my eyes to this idea of what you just described, which is being different rather than doing something mastery to the level where you're just basically like everybody else that can do that exact same thing. Now I don't know who you are, right? I just know that you might be able to do this one thing, put it on an Instagram reel, and then I forget about it. Whereas there's artists like a Warhol, which love him or hate him, you immediately recognize his style because it's different, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the biggest thing about art. It's better to be different than it is to be better. So a lot of times, if you think of something musically, it's like if I get classically trained to play an instrument from day one, then I might be great at doing classical music. But if I wasn't trained and I had to find a can here, I had a little keyboard here, and I've developed my own style. Now I'm so different, and I'm easily distinguished from everybody else. So, yeah, it's better to be different in art.
And that difference can be polarizing. I mean, I can think of bands I like. You obviously know I like heavy metal, but there's bands I like that they're very polarizing because maybe their vocalist has a very high register in their voice, and a lot of people will hear it and go, ah. And I hear it go, wow, that's different. So I'm gravitating towards that. I'm captivated by it because it's uniqueness, even though that might really segment a potential audience where you could have a generic sounding band that's good and a lot of people might like them. But I go, well, that sounds like everything else I listen to. So why would I listen to that thing or consume that thing? Pareto Health is the manager of the largest employee benefits group captive in the United States. And it's also now the main sponsor of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast. I chose to partner with Pareto Health for three main reasons. Number one, their dedication to improving the world of health benefits. Number two, their mission to reduce volatility and to make self-funding simple for mid-sized employers. And number three, the strength and scale of their program. With over 2,300 member groups and more than $1 billion of stop-loss premium under management, Pareto Health is the most robust solution of its kind in the country, period. Stay tuned for more information because I'm sure I'll be featuring them on an episode of the podcast very soon. Visit Pareto Health at paretohealth.com or follow them on LinkedIn to stay up to date on the latest news and developments. Why don't we, before we keep going, man, because I'd be remiss, we haven't even introduced who you are, dude. So real quick, AG, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you? And I'd love to kind of go back in your story as well, man, and kind of hear how you got into art in the first place.
Yeah, so I'm A.G. Ford and children's book illustrator. That's my main thing that I do in terms of art. And I went to Columbus College of Art and Design in Ohio and majored in illustration. And now I work for a bunch of different companies. I work for HarperCollins, Chronicle, Books, Candlewick Press, Simon & Schuster, Disney Hyperion, and we make books, and I'm on the art side of it. So just illustrating, and I've been doing that for about 15 years now.
What I love about you, and we met at CrossFit, right? A number of years ago, man. What I love about you is you do a job that most people know exists but don't think about, like, oh, who illustrated my children's book? And the one that I think you're probably most notable for would be the construction site series. Is that safe to say? And we've got a number of those with my daughter and my son. Yeah. You don't think about, oh, this guy or gal illustrates this super famous children's series, and you've got this job that a lot of people don't consider is a possible pathway for a career. So I'd love to go back and kind of hear where it started for you. And then if you wanted to talk about the day in the life and all those things, it's such a unique job that I'd love to highlight that. But how did you find out you were even good at art in the first place, or liked it at least?
Yeah, I mean, so I always would draw when I was a kid. And I think part of that is, my mom always had her drawings hanging on the wall, and she didn't do anything professionally with it or try to sell it, but she just had a couple drawings on the wall of celebrities and whatnot. And then even when I would go to my grandma's house, me and my friends, we draw Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. They'd always post those drawings on the refrigerator. And so I don't even know if I had to think too much about drawing. I just was always doing it. Mm-hmm. And even now, I'm sure I have two sons, 8 and 5, and we always put sketchbooks in the middle in their back seat, in the middle between them. And when they get into the car, they just grab sketchbooks and they start drawing. So I don't think they think about it either.
Sure.
It was just this cool thing to do. It's like, why not, right?
But did you realize at some moment, or was there a piece that you remember and you'll go, oh, I'm actually might be kind of good at this, or my parents recognize it, go, oh, geez, AG's like really good. There had to have been something like that, right?
I think it was just in high school, because I was playing basketball and I was doing a lot of art, but I had never taken art too seriously. It was just something that I did. And it was something that I felt like I was good at, and I love to draw people. So, one thing is, I remember going to Six Flags. We were probably 15.
Okay.
And I saw the character artist drawing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, oh, this guy's working, and they're drawing, and they're getting paid for it. And I remember going to the character artist and say, hey, how'd you get this job working here? And he was like, well, this is big time design, and we do the tattoos here, like the spray paint tattoos.
Yeah.
And we do the characters. And I was like, oh, can I get a job here? And he was like, yeah, why don't you come back next Saturday? And so I remember calling them, and I was trying to get a job there. And so that was one job that I did throughout the summers when I was in high school.
Oh, really?
So I would go there, and we started doing the tattoos, but
did you get into the caricature style as well? Okay.
So once the park closed, everyone would sit there and draw. And these guys were like 22, 23, so they just loved to draw. And we would sit there and draw. And they would teach me how to use the markers and how to draw characters.
That's cool, man.
And so I was playing basketball in high school, and I was working at Six Flags. And we would stay after the park closed and just continue to draw and draw and draw. So then they started letting me draw characters. So I was drawing caricatures at Six Flags when I was like 16.
That's cool.
And I was like the youngest artist.
You're the protege,
Yeah. And it was crazy because there was a lot of, I guess it kind of breaks you in. It's almost like a boot camp. I always feel like most people, when I hear their stories about something that they do that's a skill, there was at some point in their life where they just did that every day, all day.
Yeah.
And so I had summers of just drawing people, random people, all day, every day. And so I always talk to, when I'm speaking to my students and as I go speak at schools, I'll talk about building that neuroplasticity. And the way in terms of developing a skill, building those pathways in your brain to be able to do a skill. And we talk about doing something over and over, that repetition. So the way I describe it to them is think of a mouse kind of digging a hole through the ground, right? And I'm telling them, as that mouse digs that 10-foot hole, the next time it wants to walk through that hole, it doesn't have to dig the 10 feet anymore. It just gets to walk right through, right? And so I tell them that's how you kind of develop a skill. It's just like riding a bike. Once you've ridden it, now you don't have to get on thinking about, okay, right hand here, left hand here, put my feet on, pedal, 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 balance, don't fall, don't fall. You don't have to think about that anymore, right? So everything that we build, or any skill that we do, it's kind of built that way. And I think of drawing that way. So I kind of got boot camped doing all those caricatures. And so then I got really comfortable with drawing, and you have to draw with markers as well.
Okay.
So then you have to kind of get into the mindset of, okay, I let go of perfection. I'm just going to create something. If I have something wrong here or there, it's okay.
It's okay.
Move forward.
Yeah.
And so I felt like that was a good lesson.
Is that a freeing moment as an artist when you allow yourself to accept and utilize mistakes rather than try to be perfect?
Well, I think the best thing about it is freeing because you understand that once it's done and it's gone. Uh-huh. But I don't know that I've ever been able to let go of it mentally. I actually don't look at anything that I do once I've done it.
Okay.
So I'll look at a piece, even if it's for a book. Once I finish a drawing or a painting, I flip it over and don't look at it anymore.
Really?
Because I will pick it apart.
You have to just let it go.
Yeah, I have to let it go.
Well, that's interesting you say that. And, you know, I look at podcasting as a different type of art form, but communication and long-form communication is an art form, right? The dance that happens between the guest and the host. And I don't go back and re-listen to episodes. Yeah. It's like I sat there and talked through it. I obviously picked up a couple nuggets of memorable things. Nathaniel will go through and do the clips, but I don't obsess going back through because I did it a few times early on, and I said there and there, and you just nitpick everything you do. And then it gets you in your head where you're thinking about not trying to do those things the next time rather than just developing the skill, like you said, and allowing yourself not to be perfect throughout, because nobody, literally in no form of art or skill is ever going to be truly, truly perfect. And I think once you can get over that, then you're sort of free to just have the conversation without those constraints. I wanted to ask you though, because over coffee, you were telling me that you were a basketball player and you had designs of going to college, right? And that was maybe the hope. And then you found out there could be a pathway to get an art scholarship because you always had it in your mind you were going to have a basketball scholarship. So tell me about that story. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, so all my friends were basketball players, football players, and I remember them getting scholarships. Some of them were older than me, so I could see it happen before I was getting to be a senior. And I was thinking, I don't think I'm going to get a basketball scholarship. You know, and I knew I had aspirations to go to college, and I wanted to go somewhere far because I wanted to explore. I wanted to go to New York, Chicago, California, somewhere different outside of Texas.
Because you grew up in Texas, yeah.
Right. And I was talking with my art teacher, and he was telling me you could get an art scholarship.
Okay.
And this is something I had never really thought of or heard of. I just always thought sports. And so I think that's a very good point when I do speak is kind of talk to them about that there's art scholarships, there's writing scholarships just for good grades, of course. But this art opportunity, it was something that I could see myself in, I could lean into it. Mm-hmm. So fourth period in high school was your big elective that you could pick. So it was the class where you had 3 hours. Unfortunately, basketball and advanced placement art were fourth period. Mm. And so you couldn't do both. So my junior year, I stopped playing basketball and I switched to advanced placement art. And that's where I was able to build a portfolio. So just like an athlete would make highlight tapes, you develop like 10 to 13 pieces of art. Okay. And you develop this portfolio and you send it out. At that point, you send out slides and you send it out to different colleges along with your GPA and your SAT scores and stuff like that. Sure. And you apply for scholarships. And so I got a scholarship to go to a college in Maryland. I got accepted into School of Visual Arts in New York, which is what was my number one choice. And then I got a nice scholarship from Columbus College of Art and Design. Okay. And so, of course,
you went to the scholarship.
You go where the scholarship is. And so I went there and
well, yeah, so I mean, great. Obviously you were going to New York, LA, things like that, but it checked the box. You got scholarship, you got to move away from home, you got to pursue art in college. And so like, tell me about like day in the life of an art student, and was it what you expected and all that?
It wasn't what I expected at all. Okay. For one, I didn't realize how many people there were that was interested in art. And the cool thing is everywhere you went, you saw someone creating something. Mm-hmm. And also just understanding that everything in the world is drawn out by somebody somewhere. Yeah. So that's the coolest thing. I mean, everyone has art all around them. We don't always realize it unless we're kind of in an art museum but your watch, someone designed it. Oh, yeah. Your vacuum, your broom, your TV,
I'm sure the chairs we're sitting on,
your
right?
chairs.
Yeah.
This is all stuff that's designed. Every piece of clothing, the buildings you're in, the hotels, everywhere you are has design, and somebody somewhere is in a building designing those things for us to use. So, it was kind of cool to see the origins of everything that's around us. And it kind of, for me, I think it gives, or something that I try to tell parents that have creative kids, like, these jobs exist.
Yeah.
And, if you have a creative kid, you don't always have to shy them away from it, thinking that they're going to be living in your house.
A starving artist. Yeah.
Painting somewhere.
Yeah.
They're not. All my friends have 9-to-5s, or me, I work for myself, but it's a job, and I do well. And
Was that reinforcing for you, because maybe you still were you in college still thinking, I'm not sure if this is a career path or not, but at least it gets me through college? Or did you know once you got there that I had a path to do this for the rest of my life?
Well, we have a professional portfolio class.
Okay.
And so it does give it, it does show you the vehicles to be able to have a job. It does show you, okay, this is how you would approach a company. This is how you would apply for the job. So it's very real. You can start to see how it works. And so I think that, even me going in, I look back at it and think, wow, it's pretty ambitious to try to just say, oh, I'm just going to draw and paint. But once you kind of understand how things work, then you can see yourself in a career. It's just like, if you tell someone you want to play basketball for a living, someone that is not in the NBA might tell you that's pretty tough.
Yeah.
But someone in the NBA will tell you, well, this is what you need to start doing.
Right.
And so it makes it real for you. And I think that, it's very important for me to talk to my creatives and say, okay, this is what you want to do. Let me tell you some steps that are going to be advantageous to you to make this real for you. And it involves a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But it can happen. And so I think that's very important, because I don't like for my creatives to think that there's no way for them to have everything that they want: the family, the vacations, the finances, the comfort, and be able to raise a family and still do what you're so passionate about doing. Because at the end of the day, I look at it as, we always want to do something that we can provide, but we want to be happy.
Yeah.
And I think, no matter what you're doing, the happiest person wins. So if you're a millionaire and you live to be 100 and 50 of your years were miserable because you were trying to be a millionaire, and I'm an artist and I live to be 100 and 90 of my years were happy, I think I win.
Yeah.
And so we kind of have to look at it like that. So there's no one cut way,
But talk to me about that, because I mentioned over coffee, and I use this terminology, a true artist, right? And all I really meant by that is that somebody is so obsessed with their art and committed to whatever their medium and their form is, everything else sort of be damned, and don't want to focus on career, don't want to have to answer to anybody, never want to compromise. That's fine, right? But then I think that's what maybe, and even my own limitations as doing some creative stuff, would think either it's that or it's nothing. But what you're saying is there's obviously a lot of there in between. And even you say to me sometimes you do projects, but then you'll do your own specific things that you love to do on the side with no expectations. Nobody ever sees it, but it fulfills something inside of you, and you can do both of those things. You can still provide for your family and have a great kind of structured life and still have creative outlets in multiple forms. Some are doing it for a project. Some are simply doing it because AG wants to do it, right? And you could do both. Right. That's possible. And that's something that I think a lot of young people would just presume, oh, it's either or. There's not an and, or there's nothing in between.
Yeah, I mean, and there's always going to be some variability about how much of the project you love and how much you don't want to do. I mean, I don't know if you can accomplish anything with some level of discipline applied to whatever it is.
Sure.
We take food. You can't. You gotta eat the vegetables and the clean proteins at some point. You can't just eat what you want. So the same things come with creative. There are certain things where I have to, compromise might be the right word, but I can take on a project and it not be the most the thing I'm most passionate about.
Sure.
Like I said, if I want to, some days I'll have to wake up and I got to draw a truck that's going to talk. Okay. Some days I feel passionately about drawing a truck that talks. But some days I might wake up and say, you know, I love to draw people. So what I'm going to do the first half of this day to satisfy my creative, so I'm just going to draw some portraits. No one will ever see them. I might post them. I might not. I might just keep them away in my studio. But I'm going to do this for me. The second half of my day, I'm going to get to work on my project. Now, that's my creative balance. Some other people's balance might be, you know, more 60-40. You kind of have to feel that out and find out where you want it. But if you're going to have to sell a product, so you can compromise within your art a little bit, or some people won't compromise at all, and they'll say, well, I'm going to be an accountant, and I'll do my paintings on the weekend. I don't have to compromise at all.
Yeah.
So there's a balance, right? And that depends on how much creative you want and how much you want to do something that, you know, is non-creative. I've found a position where I can do both.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I found my happy medium. And every artist kind of has to find their happy medium. You see a lot with musicians. They might have a couple hit records. They might not come out with an album for the next 15 years. That's just where they are creatively. Okay, and if a certain project is successful, it allows them more.
Well, that's always that fine balance, because then people go, oh, he or she or they sold out, right?
Yeah.
That's the biggest fear, is a great artist will sell out for monetary gain, and now all of a sudden they lose their credibility, and their ardent fan base is like mad at them, you know? And it's like it's a really weird dynamic, whereas on one hand you go, yeah, I don't blame them, because they probably want to have families, they probably want a stable life, there's an opportunity for financial gain, and so maybe you make some sort of moderated version of your art that somebody else might have dictated to a degree. But I don't blame them. But then there's also, you know, if they stylistically lose something about them that made them unique in the first place, it's a weird dichotomy, man, that I think every artist has to determine ultimately what is the balance that they're going to strike of those two things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a lot of artists will have, you know, work that is, you'll hear the term your favorite artist, you know, and those are the people who probably are leaning less towards selling what you would consider selling out. But all that really means is that you've catered to a commercial side of something.
Sure.
Okay. And I think that, you know, how much of that you do depends on your situation. But I don't necessarily think it's selling out, because I think that when you give so much to your craft, I think you deserve to get.
No, it's a term that gets used, right? And I almost cringe at that term, because that's what I'm saying. I can articulate why an artist would make any one of those decisions, right? And then it's ultimately up to the consumer, the audience, person, member, whatever, to decide if they like it or not. And that is that delicate balance between artist and their audience. And I think ultimately it's this really almost intangible thing that happens in the creative world, where it's hard to determine, is something going to hit? Is something on brand? Is something effective? Is it not? And I think just creativity for creativity's sake is a good thing. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you got to pay your bills and pay your mortgage and all those things.
PlanSight is a complete game changer in the world of insurance brokering. As a broker, you know how time-consuming and error-prone the traditional RFP process can be. Well, what if I told you there's a better way? PlanSight is the only end-to-end RFP solution on the market made specifically for benefits agencies. It's like having a superpower that gets you an average of 8 to 10 hours back per employer renewal per year. And the best part? PlanSight supports all carriers, all funding types, and all group sizes for over 20 different benefits. If you're ready to make your RFP process faster, more efficient, and more profitable, it's time to call PlanSight. Visit plansight.com now to book a free demo and discover the future of insurance renewals.
I would love to hear, because I didn't even want to insinuate that that's what you're doing, but I think you've done a really good job of finding a fulfilling career path that also is now becoming, rewarding financially as well. So I'd love to hear, AG, like a day in the life, man, of somebody that's like 16 or whatever, and might stumble upon a clip of us talking in the future and go, I want to listen to that guy talk. Tell me what it looks like in your world, man.
Yeah, it's so now it's a lot more balanced. Okay, so I'm 15 years in, so this in the morning I get up early, go to the gym, come back. Either the wife has taken the kids to school already, or I'll take them. Give them a cup of coffee, answer a few emails, and I'll start sketching or working on a book. And I'll usually work till about 5, and then I'm done. And that's kind of how it looks. But from project to project, it really differs. So a lot of times, with the way my brain works, so Monday through Friday, some days I'll have where they're just art days. I don't want to look at any emails, look at nothing technical, no contracts, no school visits, nothing, and I keep it totally creative. So it's just sketching, research, art. I kind of get locked into that. Other days, I might have a school visit to go to, or I might have a workshop to do. Those days are very different. I'm out of studio, I'm running around. But from project, and then as well, I'll have book festivals sometimes on the weekend where my publisher might send me to do something like a panel or promote a book or a book signing. That's how I can look. But from day to day, it's very even keeled.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. When I started out, I was kind of all over the place. I would stay up late, work until 2 or 3 in the morning, waking up at 10, getting right back to it. Personal life was, of no interest. And I was just working on books because I felt like everything I needed to, spend so much time trying to make everything super perfect. And, even if I'm tired, it's kind of like this thing where it's like, what's better, a focused 6 hours or stay up late and not be focused, be tired, and work 10 hours?
Well, do you find, though, that, and maybe that's just what comes with maturity, right? And age and things like that, but do you find the structure of the day and making it more ordered actually helps with creativity, or no?
It's weird. Like, I think now with kids and everything, I think I get more done.
Okay.
I think if I have an actual schedule, I think if I put something on a schedule and do it at the time of the schedule, I think I get more done. And also think I feel less stressed. So if I have 5 things on my schedule and I do those 5 things, at the end of the day, I feel good.
Yeah, totally.
If I don't have anything on my schedule and I'm running around and doing a bunch of different things, I might be just as busy. But when I get done with the day, I feel like that was a lot.
Yeah.
Did I get everything done?
Did I get it done?
Oh,
yeah.
Did I get that done? Oh, what was number 6 on the list? I don't know. It doesn't feel good. I feel like I'm being controlled too. Like an email comes in, I jump right to it and answer the email. Versus having a day where I said, I'm not answering emails today, I'm doing all creative today.
Yeah.
So I think having that structure and having my days picked out of, okay, I'm going to the gym Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's already on my schedule. I'm answering emails on Tuesday and Thursday. All art, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? If I lay it out like that, it's good. And then I know, I have a phone call or interview call on Thursday. If it's all laid out, then I feel super productive because I can check everything off.
Yeah.
Even so bad as to, if I forget that I wrote something down on a checklist, I write it down and then cross it out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I need to have that checklist. So that's kind of what my days looks like.
Well, something I don't have context for, AG, is like a project's time span. Because I look at a book, and the construction side is the one, again, that I'm most familiar with. And those have a lot of pages, right? And your illustrations are very, very detailed. It's full page illustrations. And I don't have any context for how long something like that would take. So give me an idea of time span. And I realize it'll be averages, but give me some time span.
Yeah, so usually a book is 6 to 8 months.
6 to 8 months.
Yeah,
really?
so I like to do what's comfortable is like 1.5 books a year in terms of picture books.
Okay.
Full picture books. So full picture books, usually for the ages around 4 to 6, 4 to 7. So there's full page spreads, less words. Those are usually about 6 to 8 months.
Jeez, that's longer than I thought. Okay.
Yeah, so think of it as this way. The first 2 months is a lot of research. The next 2 months is me going back and forth with my editor and my art director. And so what we do, we start off with a bunch of loose sketches.
Okay.
So really loose, And the reason why I'm working really loose is so I can work really fast. And so that if there's changes or any revisions, they can say, hey, can you move this here, move that there? It's no problem. I'm not already into doing a final painting. First 2 months of that, next 2 months, we're going back and forth on establishing certain things with the narrative, with the storytelling, making sure everything is moving smoothly in terms of the storytelling. Are we showing the right characters? Is the right emotion being portrayed? Are we getting the large details? Is it readable? Because the best illustrations work without words. So if you can cover up the words and still understand what the story is moving forward,
right.
Because a lot of the kids, they see the images, and they're really looking at them. And then you have the words that kind of, they work with each other, but if the illustration is working, you don't even need the words.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So trying to make sure that narrative is being played out from start to finish. And then the last 4 months is usually just me with final art, and I'm just painting or drawing or finishing everything.
Yeah.
And then I turn the project in, and then that's it.
Well, so like within that, let's take a page, right? Let's say you've gotten everything you needed in terms of feedback, and we've got the story nailed down, and now AG's sitting down to go, all right, I'm going to do page 2. Right. How long might a page take?
Day and a half.
Day and a half. Okay.
Yeah.
So once all those other details are down, you know what to do. So now it's just a matter of executing on the actual vision itself, right?
Right. And you have to be fast.
You have to be
part
fast.
Of being an illustrator is being able to meet the deadline.
Yeah.
And really draw really fast. So that's why I talk to a lot of especially my college students about building that skill level and that repetition and being able to work really quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but I think you put in all that effort up in preparation too. So the speed at which it comes out is because you've prepared for months in order to do that.
Yep.
Okay. And do you have any maybe stories you could share of frustrating, like something didn't work, something got scrapped? Do you have anything like that?
Well, my first book, which we did a book. So the way I got into children's book publishing, in 2007, I graduated from the Columbus College of Art and Design.
Okay.
So you got to think about the time frames. 2007, the election's coming up in 2008. Mm-hmm. Okay. Barack Obama is the most famous person in the world at this point.
Yeah.
And so there was a manuscript written by Jonah Winter. All right. So he was actually grew up in Dallas. And he's a writer. Now we don't work together when books are starting out. Authors and illustrators, we don't work together. If you're an author, you're selling your manuscript, and if you're an illustrator, you're trying to get hired to be put on that manuscript.
Okay.
So he wrote a book about Barack Obama's life. Okay, and so he hadn't won the presidency or anything like that yet. So it's just about his life growing up in Hawaii and things like that. So I was marketing my portfolio at that same time. I was taking trips to New York, any chance I get. So I was living at my parents' house. I graduated from college. Any small job that I got, which I was working for Boys Life magazine, I would do a lot of little spot illustrations for them.
Okay.
I was working for Ohio magazine, Highlights magazine, any spot I could get. All right. So a spot is a very small illustration that goes on the side of an article.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And so any job I would get, I would take that little $500 or whatever I get, and I'd call my buddy that was working for American Eagle at the time in New York. I'd say, hey, I'm crashing on your couch this weekend. I got some portfolios some publishers to go visit. So I would do that. He'd say, cool. And I'm still in touch with him today. I think he's worked for Converse. He's worked for a bunch of different, so he had a 9 to 5. And I'd go up there, I'd show all my work, and I had this one, I had a few different portraits of like Muhammad Ali, Martin Luther King Jr., and the publisher was like, hey, we really want to get you to do this Barack book. And I said, great. It's going to be my first book deal.
Yeah.
So I was excited. So the thing about that book, though, is they said, hey, we got to get it out before the election because we don't know if he's going to win.
Yeah.
So I had to do that book in about 3.5 months.
Whoa, okay.
But this is my first book.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, no matter what happens, when I do this book, it's going to say A.G. Ford on the front. It's not going to say A.G. Ford did this book in only 3 months. And it's my first project. So I had to pull all-nighters. I didn't sleep. I didn't leave the house. Gained like 20 pounds. Just eating Whataburger and painting all night.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of frantic. I would never do this now, but every illustration or every sketch I did, I would scan it and send it to my editor because I was so nervous.
That you weren't going to fulfill the duties, yeah.
And, but what happened is we finished the book. I'm exhausted, but the book comes out, and then a couple months, or maybe a month later, he wins the election. Mm-hmm. The book goes to number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list.
Whoa.
And this is my first book.
Whoa.
So my first book is about the most famous person in the world, and he's the president now, and my book is a bestseller.
Yeah.
So of course,
holy cow,
I'm on the scene.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so the interesting thing about that is now I'm known as the picture book biography guy, right? And so now I get a bunch of picture book biography offers, right? So we're doing those, and I did a book on Johnny Cash, did a book on JFK. And so I have to realize that, okay, don't get typecast.
Yeah.
Just like an author, just like an actor, you know? And I definitely didn't want to get typecast too early in my career. And so every book that I would do that was a biography, the editor that I was working with, I would send them samples constantly as we worked. Like, hey, here's this other style. Hey, here's this other style. Hey, this other style. And finally, one bit, we did a book, couldn't be far from a picture book biography, was called Cookiesaurus Rex. It's about a dinosaur,
a
dinosaur cookie. At home.
Yeah, you gave it to us, yeah.
And so that broke the mold, and so that's what led me into being able to do all these different styles. And so that was very intentional. So it's a lot.
So you intentionally took yourself out of the lane you started in because you were concerned you'd be stuck in that.
100%.
Okay.
And so that's where it comes to, we were talking about, you know, being a commercial artist and how you find your way through it. And, you know, creating something, like I said, I'm not going to draw a dinosaur cookie by myself, right? But this is where there is some, and I enjoy doing that, but it's one of my favorite books, but it's where you say, okay, I'm an artist, I love to do portraits, but let me think about the business side of it, and let me show them that I can do other things as well. And so there is some business savvy in terms of being an artist as well. And that kind of ties back into, you know, do I create only these things that I like? I mean, I could have said I only draw people. And I don't think that would have been good for me, career-wise.
ClaimDoc is a medical claim auditing and member advocacy company. We provide fiduciary services to employer-sponsored benefit plans, and allowing them to create an environment where we ensure that the benefit plans are being charged in a fair and reasonable basis.
My business is basically people, and it become a real simple transition. We thought it was going to be far more complex. I've saved, we'll say, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I could not say enough about ClaimDoc.
Well, but I think there's also something you mentioned about doing the Cookiesaurus Rex and kind of laughing about it. But there's something about constraints being put on creativity. Like if you just said, all right, AG, go make me something. You probably have something in mind, right, ultimately, but you might also struggle because it's like, well, what do I make? What should I make? What do they want? They didn't give me any information. But if you put a constraint on and say, well, I'm going to draw a Cookiesaurus Rex for this book.
Yeah.
Okay, I can draw a Cookiesaurus Rex and I'm going to mine all my creativity into that channel and that lane for this project, and then it can be done, right? And then I can do something else. I've always found that it's like sometimes when people go, hey, Spencer, can you create something on this subject, right, in my insurance world? Like, can you write us a post about this? I'm like, okay, that's interesting because now they gave me a framework of what they want and they gave me a subject to mine, and now I'm going to go put all my creativity in mining that particular subject. By somebody else giving me an example of what they wanted to get out of it, now I could focus the creativity into that particular thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%.
But you said one of the things that you found might been your marketability in a sense is the fact that you can change styles often. Your style might even be your ability to change styles.
Yeah.
Like when did you recognize that you had the ability to bounce around like that?
I think it was working at Six Flags was one thing because I had to draw with this marker. Okay. So you're drawing with this marker, and then you have people requesting all different types of things. Like, so when you draw a caricature and you're drawing someone, they say, hey, make me a football player, make me this, make me that. So I'm having to jump around and do a bunch of different things quickly. Then I'm doing art projects in high school where it's a lot of realism. So those are very different. So we got the realism with drawing portraits, then we got this cartoony style. And so being able to jump back and forth between those two things, you kind of have to be versatile. And so, and I've always been able to kind of do that, I guess because of that. And so also with the, thinking about it from a business, and I'm looking at when you go to Barnes & Nobles, I'm saying, okay, I started doing picture book biographies. I look at the biography section in the children's books, it's about 5%. I say, this can't be all of my work, me battling for 5% of the industry. This also comes into where I'm doing a bunch of, I started off with some Black history books. So I don't want to get locked into that either. I love doing my Black history books. I'm very passionate about that. But Black history books are only a certain part of the market. I got to be able to draw a dinosaur cookie. I got to be able to draw this truck. I want all of the market. You know, I want to be able to do all of it. And I love doing the Johnny Cash book. That's different. Okay, so he can draw different. He can draw different people. He can paint different skin tones, and he can do cartoony stuff. Okay, so now that gives my agent, who I work with, when he gets a manuscript across his desk that's been purchased by a publisher, he can say, well, AG could do that. Let me send that to him and see if he wants to do that.
Yeah.
So
have you found that fulfilling to be able to sort of challenge yourself in a new style? Do you think that's creative fulfilling for you personally?
Yeah, it's fun because what I'll do is, and I still do this to this day, any editor that I work with, they're going to get some samples from me for something.
Okay.
So that's part of my marketing is kind of in-house. So if I know my editor is reading manuscripts all day and we're working on a Johnny Cash book and she just got a manuscript about dinosaurs or whatever, and I'm sending her samples of this cartoon, and she can say, when we get done with this project, I really liked working with AG. He was easy to work with. He could do this too. So it's all in-house. Because a lot of people say, well, how do you market yourself? Well, my agent and then my books are the marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I can market myself to the person I'm already working with because they're going to get a project that's going to come in. And they don't want to have to search for a new artist for every single book they come in, too. So it makes it easier for them. And so from a business standpoint, that's kind of how I've stayed.
Well, and I think, it happens in most people's career, and I'm sure it's the same as you, is like once you get to the point where you've established yourself, you've got the credibility, you've got repeated examples of successful work, the work starts coming to you instead of you seeking it out, right? We're all sudden now they're like, oh, AG's the person. We know he's going to do a great job on this, and it comes to you because of your track record. So like, was there a moment where that started happening and you started maybe even realizing like, oh, I am pretty good, right?
Yeah, well, the moment actually comes when you have enough work where you have to turn something down.
Yeah.
And so it's weird because coming into art, I'm trying to get any book deal I can get. I was going to New York, just please give me a book deal.
Almost not desperate, right? But I mean, you're trying to start, right?
Yeah, there's some desperation there, and desperation is good. It causes anxiety and it causes you to really put effort in, right? And when you get to the point where you realize, okay, I did 3 books this year. The last one I did, I think I could have done better because if I'd have had more time. Now that gets you to the point where you say, okay, 2 good books is better than 3 average books.
Okay.
Let me turn this book away. So when you start doing that, there's some comfort in being able to turn a project down and it's not affecting you
financially.
And
financially. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you look at it in the long run, because art lives forever, you can say, the quality over the quantity is something that needs to take place. That's why, you want to be able to look back at your work and say, this is good because, like I said, it's never going to say AG4 did this book in 5 months. It's just going to say AG4 and the art's going to be there. And that's what I'm judged on. So taking that in consideration a lot, and even if I have to take less money, turn down a project that I would really like to do just to make the book that I'm working on really good, I'll do that now because there's some security in
and there's security, and there's also, that's when you sort of get into the abundant style mindset. No, the next project's going to come, right?
Yeah.
I keep doing great work. The next project's going to come, and you don't have that fear of scarcity that comes with it. And was something I want to move into, and before we sort of start to wrap up the podcast, is that I know public speaking has become a part of your life, right? And I want to hear if it was intentional or if it came to you. But talking to young kids, going to schools, telling them about your career, but also showing them an example of what's possible. And I'm sure, that's fulfilling from a personal standpoint to get to share your story. But tell me how this public speaking thing originated.
Yeah, so there's a thing called the Texas Bluebonnet. awards
Okay.
in Texas, right? For
Oh, dude, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
for
Yeah,
children's books.
Yeah, yeah.
And so one of my books, my earlier books called Goal, it's a soccer book, and it was on the Texas Bluebonnet. One of the librarians had reached out to me and said, "Hey, can we get a school visit from you? You know, your books are Texas Bluebonnet. Aren't you doing school visits?" And I had no idea. And I said, "Sure, I'll come to your school and speak." And so I came to the school and spoke to the kids and got to read the book and do some live drawing for them.
Oh, cool.
And they loved it. And I was like, this is awesome. And then as I started doing more events, I was realizing that there was a bunch of illustrators and authors from all around the US that were coming to Texas to do school visits. And I would always, contact them like, "Hey, let's do lunch or whatever." And I realized that people are speaking all around here. And the more I spoke, the more people was, "Hey, we want to get you to come out and speak to our kids."
Yeah.
And so it became something I do quite often now. And even for the last maybe 4 or 5 years, I've spoken at the Hockaday School for Girls.
Okay.
I go there for 2 or 3 days each semester and work on them with their projects, all the way from the lower school to the middle school to the upper school. And they would all be working on different book projects, and I would come in as someone to kind of help guide them how to tell a story, how to push their stories forward and their narratives. And it was just something that I became really passionate about.
Do you think you're going to, I'm sure you're going to continue, but do you think you're going to lean in heavily at some point to speaking regularly? I mean, is that going to be a big part of your life, or will it always just sort of supplement?
Yeah, I think it's something that I can do on the side. I mean,
Okay.
I'm really passionate about creating books. And even now, I don't take as many speaking events as I could.
Sure.
Just because creating the books, it's kind of this, you need the books to be able to speak. And so it's something that I can do here and there. And it's something that I like doing, especially for the elementary kids. It's more of entertainment for them because they're enjoying books, and just to get them passionate about books. And it's something that I really want every level to kind of keep, at the picture book level. They love books, but when they get into middle school, they should be into graphic novels and middle grade readers and stuff like that. In high school, I think kids should always be reading books. I feel like in high school, I wasn't reading as much books. And, I read a lot of books now, whether they be self-help or history, and I just think they give you just a great perspective on life.
Sure, man.
And I feel like books can really make life less confusing. If you can listen to an expert on a particular subject, whether it be psychology or sociology, or kind of understanding why things are, how people work, I think they've really helped me. And I think that, so for me, it's good to kind of get them locked into books and have that a general part of their life. And I think it helps in adulthood.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I'm not surprised in the slightest, right, that you're able to do that and have fun with it. And I'm sure the kids just are over the moon when they see somebody, one, have a career doing this, and then watch you draw in front of them and all that stuff. That's got to be awesome, man. I have no doubt. But why don't we talk big picture, man? Because you're 15, 16 years into your career right now. I'm curious what you feel like you may want to accomplish, or if you were to look back at your life as an artist, a professional artist, and would go, I'm proud of what I've done. Do you have any of these big ideas in mind of what you want to do?
What's interesting about that is I've been so career focused since I got into college.
Okay.
I was so career focused. I feel like right now, and I'm in this period where I've kind of gotten my career to a place where there's some comfort. Right. And I feel like a lot of my focus has kind of drifted over into having a well-balanced life.
Okay.
And so I think right now I've just been enjoying being able to have my career, be able to work throughout the week, not work on weekends, and really focus on family, my kids. I coach my 5-year-old in soccer. That's just so much joy doing that.
Yeah.
Being able to go on vacations with the family, my wife not working, her being home, being able to dedicate her time to the kids. I feel like I'm at this kind of golden period where I know that this time with my kids will not always be there. Right. And once they're 16, 17, I know they're going to be always wanting to be away, right? More and more. So I feel like at this time, what I see for myself over the next 8 years, 9 years, I would love to be able to maintain my business where it is. It's a good income. Everything's kind of solid. Doing some good books. I got some successful series going on with the Matic Treehouse and the construction site, and doing my own style outside of that on my other books. My focus right now is to keep this well-balanced thing going on for the next 8 to 10 years while my kids are young, because I'm spending so much time with them. And I know that there's no amount of dollars that are ever going to be able to give me this time back. So that's really my main focus for the next, people thinking the 5-year plan. That's my plan.
That's a brilliant answer.
Keep this
man.
beautiful.
And you and I were having this conversation before we walked in the studio. It's like, you get to a point in life, I'm 41. I got to this point where, some days I even pinch myself, like, do I get to do this for real? And I'm sure maybe if this is the first episode that anybody's ever seen, I'm in the insurance world and I have a nice career with a company called Pareto Health, and they allow me to do this alongside it. And I look at it and go, man, I'm almost going, oh, well, surely this is the shoe's going to drop and this is going to go away. It's almost like you're guilty that maybe your life is as you maybe would have envisioned it 10 or 15 years ago, and you're there and it's happening. And it's hard to accept sometimes that it's actually great, right? Because you think, oh, surely things will get worse at some point in the future. And it's like, why? I don't know if I need anything more than I currently have, because I love my life. And I'm glad to hear you say that. It's almost like, no, I'm still struggling. I still got to get there. And maybe in 10 years, I'll look back and be proud of what I've done. It's like, you could be proud of what you're doing and love what you're doing right here, right now. I think that's awesome that you feel that way, man.
And it's weird because I think about it. If you think about who we are, like as human beings, before photography, right? We weren't able to record or have pictures or have images of what happened 10 years behind us and 10 years in front of us, or not in front of us, but 10 years behind us, and think about all these things. So I just think, trying to value the present, purely, try to value the present as much as possible. Of course, we always got to think about the future, but I'm really, and especially today with social media and all these things, we can always be locked into how everything looks and what happened in the past. And it's valuing the present is what I'm really trying to do. Of course, like I said, we got to think about the future, but just valuing what's going on right now and just recognizing, and not waiting 10 years from now and thinking back, man, 10 years ago was great. It's like, well, did you feel great when you're in it? Because you got to recognize it.
You got
to recognize how great it is. And so 100%. I'm just there right now.
Cool, man. Well, I'm so happy to hear that. So real quick, obviously we talked about a couple of your books. I want to highlight, you've got the construction site series, which is, you said one of them the Christmas one went to #1 on New York Times bestseller list.
With Sherry Rinker. She's the author.
She's the author.
She's awesome, yeah.
And you said Magic Treehouse is another one that you're doing a lot of. And then I know Cookiesaurus Rex. I know the Little series as well. But are any other ones that you're proud of that you want to call out before we jump?
So I got a book coming out in April. It should come out in about 2 weeks. It's called Like Father, Like Son. So it's all about, it's these different scenarios with fathers and their sons.
Oh, cool.
So it kind of hit close to home with me. So that one's coming out. But the cool thing about books is it's not always about the release date, right? These books are always kind of out there floating until they get into that where they stop printing them. So you just go AG Ford. AG4illustration.com is my website. But if you're on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, click AG4, you'll see a ton of my books. So there's usually something.
Well, yeah, by the time this will come out, that one will have been released as well.
Okay,
so yeah,
perfect.
so what was called Like Father, Like Son by AG Ford. I'll tag you on all the social posts, right, and make sure people can find you really easily. But man, dude, I'm so glad we finally got to do this and sit down. And this is so far outside of what I normally cover, but I was, you and I have known each other for 6, 7, 8 years or more now. And your books are sitting on my children's shelves, and you signed a couple, man, and I appreciate that. And so I just wanted to be able to share your story with the audience, man.
No, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Good. I'm glad you enjoyed it, man. I did too. Thanks.